Hey, what's going on, DDO players? Axel here. So, with the new expansion that dropped just a couple weeks ago, we got a new adventure area, and that's really interesting because it's been a while since we've gotten a new one. It's been a long time, actually. And this isn't just any new adventure area. It's not just a half-assed adventure area. It's a huge adventure area with a lot of different landscapes. It's actually seems to be the biggest adventure area we've ever gotten in DDO. I'm pretty sure it's bigger than the Stormhorns. But it's interesting because we have not had an adventure area in a long time. It's actually been since update 21 that we got a brand new adventure area. Now there's been a couple of epic adventure areas since then, like Three Barrel Cove and Necro 4, but it's been update 21 since we've gotten a brand new adventure area, and that dropped on March 10th, 2014. That's 16 updates and nearly 4 years since we've gotten a new one. It's just crazy how fast time flies now. I'm in my 30s, and it's just like every year goes faster. I can't believe it's been almost 4 years since Thunderhome came out. It still feels like it came out yesterday. But anyways, it's been a long time. So it's really cool to see that they've brought in a new one because it's a part of the game I really enjoy. I think it's important to content. I think it's very important to the immersion of content. So in this adventure area, the Land of Barovia, there are two versions. There's a level 10 and a level 30, so a heroic and a legendary. It has 3 public hubs within the area, and each of these hubs has additional teleport options. So there's 3 main teleport options, and then from each of those small hubs you can also teleport to individual quests. So it seems like every quest, all of the 12 standard quests that come with the expansion, actually have free immediate direct transport, and I understand why they did that. It's kind of gone out of style to have to actually run through the adventure area, but I was kind of hoping that they would at least require a little bit of running, or maybe at the minimum you have to run there one time to unlock the teleport, because I think that's important for immersion. But that aside, let's go ahead and get into a little more details. I'll go ahead and just tell you the lore of this. I'm going to read this straight off the DDO wiki. So in D&D lore, Barovia is a mountain valley within the fictional Balanoak, I don't know how to pronounce that, Balanoak Mountains. The terrain is densely wooded, and the climate is one of frigid winters. The valley nests a small village, also named Barovia, over which looms Castle Ravenloft, the home of Count Strahd. And Count Strahd is the antagonist of this pack. The location is based around real-world Transylvania, which is very apparent. It's very dark, very wooded. There's castles. I think I mentioned this in a prior video, but it makes me feel like a 1930s black and white horror movie. It's kind of the vibe I get from not just the adventure area, but the whole pack. There's a few other interesting things I noticed. There's other small teleporters called just Mists of Ravenloft that you run into while you're in the adventure area, and they'll teleport you from one part of the adventure area to another. There's also a few other little things. I noticed one section, I found an NPC in the wilderness area that started following me after I talked to him and started fighting stuff with me. I'm not sure how common that is, but it's just one thing I ran into. I haven't spent an enormous amount of time, but there's nothing like, say, Necro 4 adventure area or King's Forest, where there's random encounters that have little subquests within the adventure area, and that's unfortunate. I really like that aspect of those adventure areas. Other than there's really nothing else to do in the adventure area other than slay your standard slayers, rares, and explorers, which is a little disappointing because they went through the effort to make this huge adventure area that has all kinds of detail in it, and they didn't really give us a whole lot of reason to use it because, as I just mentioned, we have free teleport options to all the quests, so there's really no reason to ever run through the adventure area at all unless you just want to do the Slayer Rare Explorers. I was kind of hoping there would be a little bit more intricate quests like we saw in King's Forest or Necro 4, little subquests within the adventure area, or preferably at least a little running required through the adventure area so that's actually utilized and get you immersed a little bit. But they decided not to do that. I understand why. I don't agree with it, but I understand why they did it. And let's go ahead and get into some of those reasons, because in the past, And I made a longer discussion about this in a video I made about a year and a half ago called Adventure Areas and Immersion, where I give my entire spiel on this. So I'll kind of summarize it here, but if you want to hear the rest of it, I'll link the video in the description. But in the past, basically we had a trend where all new content, for the most part, now some was public area only, but most content had some kind of adventure area with it, and you had to actually run through the adventure area. But now we kind of went through a transition period. For example, in the Stormhorns, for example, and Wayloon, there is teleport options, but you have to actually pay astral shards for it. But now we've gotten to the point where that's just free. So we kind of went through this transition to where there was no teleport option, and then teleport option became a premium feature, and now teleport is just a standard thing. It seems like all new content that we have either has a teleport option or has a small or is direct entry from public area. But there's a lot of reasons why I think this went out of style. Not just in DDO, but a lot of other games kind of popularized the idea of fast travel. Like Skyrim comes to mind, kind of popularized that feature. But with the staff, I know that this is one thing they've had to cut out in the past. That's the vibe I get, at least. I, of course, don't know for sure because I obviously don't work for Standing Stone Games. But I think lack of manpower is a reason. When they try to get out as much new content as they can, obviously, and what really matters to players the most is the quests themselves. So I think they've been trying to cut out things that just have drained their resources, and it's just not for the purposes of slacking off or anything. It's just for the purposes of, hey, they have smaller staff now, so they want to spend more of their manpower on actual quests instead of the adventure areas, which makes sense. I also think there's been a lot of community complaints in the past about having to run through adventure areas. I remember seeing that years ago pretty frequently, people upset about having to run through adventure areas. So I think they've just responded to community feedback and said, okay, well, people like teleporters, so we'll just give them teleport options to everything, and we'll just keep doing that, and that's how we'll build content from now on. Also, I think adventurers have just gone out of style. Like I mentioned, they've just gone out of style in games. Like you see tons of games now have fast travel options, whereas in the past, growing up in the 90s, I don't remember, like most RPGs that I can remember did not have fast travel. But for one reason or another, the developers have decided not to focus on adventure areas, so it's kind of cool to see them back. That leads you to ask, well, why did they bring them back? Well, I think they had to bring an adventure area back to this particular expansion just because it's a classic pack and they needed to actually have an adventure area for immersion purposes. It just wouldn't make sense to have a Ravenloft without, actually having the land of Barovia in the game. So basically it was required, but I'm a little disappointed that they didn't utilize it more. It's more just there, I feel like, because it had to be there, and they just did the minimum in terms of actually implementing content you can engage with, like Slayers, mini quests areas, having to run through it, things like that within the adventure area. I feel like they just did the minimum there. They certainly didn't do the minimum in terms of design. They did a great job designing the area aesthetically. So I'm not saying that, but I feel like they kind of did the minimum in terms of just implementing interactable content within the adventure area. I know a lot of people will say, hey, Axel, why are you arguing for adventure areas? It's just a repetitive waste of time to have to run through the adventure areas. Why do you not like teleport options? And I'll explain that. Just look, my counter to the argument that it's a waste of time, it's repetitive to run through an adventure area is, well, what do you think you're doing anytime you play a quest that you've played 50 times before? It's a repetitive experience, but to me, running through the adventure area is part of the immersion. So when you say in pen and paper, you go to a tavern or whatever, you go to a quest giver, just like in this game, and you talk to the quest giver, and what do? You don't just all of a sudden teleport to that dungeon or that mountain or that sewer or wherever your quest is. You have to actually go there. So I think it should work the same. It only makes sense. You don't randomly skip that part. And for those who say, hey, it's just a waste of time, well, I think that time that it takes you to run to the quest should be factored in when it comes to drop rates or experience. So say you have two quests of identical length, and let's say quest A gives you 30,000 experience points but is direct entry from a public area, but quest B is the same length of quest, but you have to do a 5-minute run, well, then you should that quest should have more experience. You should account for that. So maybe you have that quest give 40,000 experience points, or whatever equals that out. And with loot drop rates, the same thing. You know, make loot drop whatever extra it needs to drop in order to balance that out. So just consider, I really consider the run part of running to the quest part of the actual quest itself. So overall, I'm really glad that we got a new adventure area, and I really like the design of it and the aesthetic, and I like how big it is, but I'm a little bit disappointed in the fact that they didn't utilize it much. It's just kind of there. There's not a lot of a reason to interact with it or even use it. In fact, I don't think you even have to interact with it at all if you don't want to, since there's no required runs, not even a required one-time run to unlock a point for fast travel. It's all just given to you immediately. So I would have liked to see something like a King's Forest mini quest type thing, or at least a one-time required run, just something so we had more to do with this adventure area. But nevertheless, it's still really nice to see it there, and I'm glad they brought it back. So guys, comment below, let me know what you think about this, if you like this area, if you like that these things are back, or if you just don't care at all and you're just going to do the quests and the raids and you just don't even care to run through it for the Slayers. But yeah, just let me know. That's going to be it for this video. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next time. Take care.